What's up, it's Cape Sipes, Custom Audio Reimagined, and today we have a blast from the past. I haven't done one of these in a long time, but shouldn't be too hard. Hopefully I don't get bit in the butt by anything, because I need to get this thing knocked out quick today. What we've got today is a 2005 Dodge Neon. I've done a lot of Neons in my life, but it's been a long time, and it is a blast from the past. Looking at the dash and the inside on here. These are what I was doing when I was at Best Buy. So I was doing 20 cars a day. I mean, it was just so many cars that brings back a lot of memories, certain vehicles. And this was one of them, along with like the Cavalier and the Berettas. And now I'm just definitely aging myself. Now, what's gonna be interesting about this install is I am using something I've never used before. When I was at Knowledge Fest in Las Vegas, I did notice that Boss and Jensen both came out with like a really strong showing of new radios. Now, the Boss radios got a really good track going during COVID because they were the only company that actually had any inventory. So Boss picked up a pretty good market share during COVID. A lot of shops, including myself, put in the Boss radios, which we never would have done in the past. And honestly, they weren't that bad. It's not like I want to jump to them all the time, but they got the job done. They weren't bad, and I didn't have any returns, I don't think, on them. But today, we are going to try out the Jensen setup because in Vegas, I was really curious when I saw it. And here it is. And it's the Car 813. So this is an 8-inch floating screen. It's got wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. Not super expensive at all. Definitely on the bottom spectrum of cost. But when I was in Vegas, I was messing with they had this, they have a 10-inch, they have a 12-inch. And now they have Maestro compatible, which so does Boss, which was really surprising to me. So I was like, I wonder if they've actually stepped up and they can kind of fill a niche. You know, I don't have a lot of customers that are gonna go with something like this or go with Jensen or Boss, but I definitely would take Jensen over Boss just for the fact that most customers know what Jensen is, they've heard of it, and Boss, they haven't, and you run into that whole game. But this does fill a void for me in a certain area, and that area is the older generation. So I have two rules basically here at Custom Audio Reimagined. I turn down more work than I take in because I do not do Amazon package installs. I don't do crappy equipment installs. I mean, I just don't do that work, and I kick it down the road and I get plenty of calls and I just turn it away. It's not what I do here. But if you're 16 years old, so if a mom and dad calls me and it's their kid's first car, I never turn those away, even if it's the most basic radio install ever, because I want that kid to have a great experience. I want their first stereo to be a good experience because that's how we build customers in the industry. I would not be able to take care of my family if there wasn't an industry, and we need customers. So you give someone a bad experience and they're done. Their whole life, they're never gonna get anything done to their car because they're never gonna forget about that horrible experience they had with their first car or whatever car it was. Rule 2 is older people. Older people, veterans, doesn't matter what they want, I'm gonna try and go out of my way to get them taken care of. And that is because I've seen, I wanna say, a lot of shops that just go about it the wrong way. Now what I mean by that is I have known of multiple shops that have unfortunately taken advantage of elderly people or taken advantage of people that just don't really have an idea of what things should cost and just get completely ripped off. And that wouldn't have happened if they were younger or just a little bit, more on the ball. So if someone calls me and I know they're older, I basically just look at it as, this could be my mom, this could be my dad. I do not want them to get completely ripped off. I don't want them to get scammed. And I try to get them taken care of. And that's what this customer is. This is an older gentleman, doesn't want anything at all. All he wants is satellite radio. But if you know, satellite radio tuners are kind of a thing of the past. And now to do satellite radio, it's just easier to go Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, get a mobile subscription, and when you put the app on your phone, it'll appear up there, and it works just like if you had a tuner. He called me after he went to another shop. Now, the other shop wasn't ripping him off. The price they gave him was fine. They weren't gouging him at all. It was actually cheaper than what, I'm doing it for. But it was the product. What they were going to sell him would have been miserable. He would have hated it. So what they were looking at selling him was a single DIN radio with a single row screen, no touch screen, no like monitor. It's just a little dot matrix or whatever, LCD single row screen. And then a satellite radio tuner and everything and installed. The problem with that is, with a single DIN radio, you can't fit all the information on the screen. So what happens is, while you're looking for a channel, it's a real pain in the ass trying to navigate to get to the channel you want. But then when you find, like, you're listening to a song, it'll show like half of the song's title and then scroll. And then it'll go to the artist and then scroll the rest of their name. And then get and scroll. There's no information there. For an older person, it can be very confusing to constantly have this movement on the screen and not be able to read the words because you don't catch it in time. And my blind ass, I can barely read anything anyway. So I got to sit there and squint at it. And then if it moves, I'm like, what the hell just happened? It's just not going to be a good experience for him. So luckily, the Jensen fits the bill for everything he needs. And it was only $100 more than what the other shop quoted. So instead of just getting a little single DIN radio, he's getting an 8-inch touchscreen. He's going to have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, wireless. He's got so much more for an extra $100. Let's go ahead and get this thing apart. I got to see if I can remember how to take apart a Dodge Neon. And here we are inside the Neon. So if I remember right, what has to happen is I have to take these off. If I remember right, you got to take off the knobs. Yep. Then I believe you pop out the vents. Yeah. My wife's going to be so mad when she sees this because I can't remember our anniversary or her birthday. But apparently I remember how to take apart a Dodge Neon. So, sorry, honey. I just look at it as this is what put food on the table. And yep. Screws. I think that's it. I think this whole thing will just pop right out. So we'll go in here with a little tool. Yep. Little poppy around. Now, if I remember right, when you take this radio out, the antenna on these was super short. Like if you pull it out, you'll break the antenna off. I remember that happening a lot on these. So you have to bring it out and then you got to shove your hand back there. I think that's why I brought this here. Pretty sure this was the tool. So if you pull it out, you'll get it just far enough that you can stick this back there and just pry pop the antenna out. So I can't do the camera and do that. So let me put this down and pull this radio. All right, so I have the screws out. Let's see. Oh yeah, I can already feel it. See how it's wanting to kick the radio up. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it never made sense to us why they did this. Now I'm having a vague memory. I think if you drop the glove box or back there was a fastener that was holding the antenna that you could undo, and that would give you more slack. I'm vaguely remembering this. But right there's the antenna. Right there. See that thing? That's the antenna. So then you come in with this handy dandy tool I was just talking about. And with this thing, I'm trying to do it. So got my tool on it. And there. You undo it. And now, see how much slack there is? That's that ridiculous antenna back here. Oh, it's so dumb how short it was. Then we'll unplug the radio. And there we go. I remembered how to do it. So now that that's out, we can move on to the assembly of the kit and the new radio. Now this vehicle, the Neon, takes the 706502 harness. And they have this sheet in here, but some of them don't. This was kind of like an add-on, and there's sometimes you won't have this in there. But what this is some of the vehicles don't have accessory power. So this red wire right here, you see where it's populated in the harness? So it's right there on the top. What you want to do is you want to go to the car, plug this in, or not plug it all the way in because you don't want to short stuff out, but you know, line it up. Look at the factory harness and make sure there's a wire populated where the red wire is. If there isn't, you're going to have to run a wire to the fuse box because that means it doesn't have accessory power. Now on here, it has listed which vehicles. So you can see right there, it's Chrysler 300, Durango, Magnum, Jeep Grand Cherokee. But you always want to check regardless because Dodges are weird sometimes, the older ones. But this one does have it. And I always check the ground too, because they used to do this weird ribbon ground. So now I've just gotten the habit where I always check to make sure that the ground wires are populated. All right, so with everything kind of laid out here from the Jensen radio, we got the box there, obviously. There's the box here of like hardware. Actually a lot in this box. I was curious as of the microphone, and yes, it does have a GPS antenna. I was curious if it was going to have a GPS antenna because the wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlays, a lot of them require the antenna. But I have noticed that some of the newer like Sonys and Kenwoods don't have it anymore, but this unit does have it. It's something that Apple or Androids, one of them required it for accuracy. When you're going wireless and not a wired connection, apparently the GPS accuracy doesn't meet their standards. So they required companies to have an external GPS antenna to compensate for that. So just remember that when you're putting it in, you're gonna have to run a GPS antenna. 8-inch screen, chassis with all the electronics, and all the extra little foam bits that you save because these make awesome forts for your G.I. Joe figures. I wanted to point out one of the reasons why I decided to go with this unit and why I was really happy this unit exists. So here's the screen, which honestly, it looks really clean. The finish on it, it's got a little brushed aluminum across the bottom maybe. Got some chrome there around the button, but that is what I'm gonna talk about. That is why I decided I wanted to use this unit, and while I was kind of excited that they had these in Vegas so I could see them. As an installer, shop, whatever, you're trying to get your customer what they're looking for, their upgrade, why they want it, the features they're wanting, whatever reason it is. That's the first step, figuring out what they're looking to add to their vehicle and coming up with products that will do what they want within the budget that they have. That's like the first step. That's good enough for most shops. Most shops will just ride it out with that. Then you move on to kind of better shop procedures, or what better shops will do. I do this just naturally because I've been doing this so long. This is what I've always done. Once I know what features they are, as I'm talking to the customer, I'm listening to their voice because I need to know a few things. I need to know their gender, which it does matter. I need to know if they're young, old. I need to be able to tell over the phone if they're tech savvy or if they're really not in touch with new technology. When I mention certain features and they don't know what they are, that tells me, you know, they're not up on things. But these are all key things that I listen to, and that also plays a role in what I'm going to pick for that customer and the reasons why. And this is a perfect example. Knowing that this customer was elderly, and then this right here, this volume knob is a godsend for elderly people. And I always offer a volume knob like this that's a big one because a lot of older people may have shakes. Their hands, everybody's seen it, where their hands will shake. They can't push the buttons on, you know, just a touch screen or a tactile, just buttons on the side. They can't do it. But it's embarrassing for them to admit that. Or it's embarrassing to them if they have family members in the car and they're doing this and they can't turn the radio up or down. And nobody wants to be embarrassed and nobody deserves to be embarrassed. So to alleviate that embarrassment from ever happening, you have to think as an installer, what would be best for this customer I'm speaking to? And he may not have the shaky hands, I don't know. But I know he was elderly. I know he was talking about, you know, wanting to be able to see things, which told me he may have a vision thing. So this radio, when I showed it to him, first thing he said was, I really like that volume knob in the middle. Is that a volume knob? Done. So I guarantee you he may have either the shaky hand or he may have arthritis where it's really hard for them to be able to put pressure on the tips of their fingers. When you get old, man, it hurts. So these are just the silly little things that most people don't think of, and other shops will just be like, whatever. But then when you start doing it, you'll start noticing that your customers become repeat customers that always come back, and their family members, and you're getting, everything is done by referral, which is how my entire business is ran. I've never spent one penny on marketing. Never in my life, and I never will. Everything is word of mouth and referrals. And it's things like that that make that happen. So that's just my 2 cents. I want to throw that out there because I really like that feature on here. I'm hoping this radio looks good and functions really well, because so far I'm really liking it. And I don't care that it says Jensen. I just want a performance is all I care about. So let's go ahead and continue with this install. All right, so this is a trick for you young installers. All the old guys know this. But sleeves are very rarely used anymore because everybody does double DINs. But with these kinds of units, you back to a sleeve. Single DIN sleeve, like old school radios used to be. Take a Sharpie and paint the cage. Just trust me, paint the front of the cage, and then on the sides, you want to run it along the edge and just black that out. It'll save you so much headache in the future when you put in a radio. If it doesn't set recessed into the kit, you'll see the silver around, and it's just unprofessional and looks like crap, and a simple Sharpie will fix it and make it look so much better. First thing I don't like is I don't like their cage. They did not put the proper amount of bend tabs. These little tabs that you bend back, they didn't put them in the right position. These are the closest ones that you have to the edge on both sides here. And if you look, they don't come close to touching the kit, and no matter what I do to bend them. So what you end up with is, see all that play? So there's no way to actually lock this sleeve into this kit to where it'll be rock solid. And the fact that you're gonna be able to move this screen, I need that to be solid. So I'm gonna have to adhere that or do something. Honestly, I think the easiest solution will probably be hot glue. Just run a little bead of hot glue across the top there. But when I say hot glue, you got to realize I'm not talking about like your mom's crafts hot glue. What I use is a high temperature construction glue. So like this stuff right here, I also have it in black. You can get them all kinds. But this right here works really well, but it's construction grade, which means it has basically a lot more hold to it, but also a lot of these are really high temperature. Like if your car were to ever get to the temperatures that these are, the interior would melt. This is my hardcore glue, which is what I'll end up using. We've got the harness plugged in there, the antenna. We ran the GPS antenna, it's ran over there to the corner, and we have the microphone ran up there to the steering column where I always put them. Then I pulled out this piece, took out the 12-volt cigarette lighter, and now have added a USB port. So this gets mounted right there below at the bottom of the dash. So now it's time to start putting everything in and getting this radio plugged in and making sure everything's gonna fit and work properly. And a lot of these you'll notice have 2 USB ports. So the other one is just for charge only. It doesn't do Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. I always just throw these in the glove box. There's no reason to have 2 USBs on the dash, because what that will lead to is confusion. The customer won't know which one is Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. They'll plug in, they'll get mad because it won't work because they'll be in the wrong one. So don't worry, I just throw it over there in a glove box. Now normally what I do on these floating screens is I set the body back as far as I can so I can get the screen as close to the dash so it's not sticking out so much. Unfortunately, you can't do it on this one because this one has to use the cage, and there's no sides where you can actually move the body back and screw it into. But I think it's going to work out just fine because with the screen in here, it's like perfect, like right here for him. He can still get to his controls. If it was somebody younger or they wanted to look a little bit more integrated, it would be really hard to do in this car, especially with the controls up top there, it'd be almost impossible because you would have to cover that. You wouldn't be able to have access. So I think it's going to work out just fine. And the GPS antenna is up here. So I'll stick that down up there. And that will be job done. So let's test this out. Everything seems to work. I'm doing the setup. It's the first time I've ever done a Jensen setup, but it has this auto scan here. So normally you do that in your radio, but it's part of the original setup. So it went ahead and auto scanned every radio station that came in. Now, first impressions. Screen's actually really bright. It's clean looking. I hate radios, so let's find the home button. Hold it. Yeah. See right there, button. It says source, but then the long line home, so long press. There's the home screen. I jump back to the radio, of course, because that's what it wants to do. So far, not bad, not bad. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, AV input. Go to the settings. See what kind of audio settings. I'm always interested in the audio. You got sub output, default volume, and loudness. Well, I think I should probably, I don't like the fact that one click is source. They should have made it one click takes you back to home, long press is source. Because that's just intuitively wrong. And there it is, Android Auto, working just fine. Seems to be fast, responsive. I mean, for the price and everything, this is what you're wanting it for. I mean, nobody's really using it for the radio, but yeah. Pretty nice, actually. And there it is with wireless. I'm not connected in any way. Android Auto. And it seems to be responsive. What you'll find on like the real cheap, like Amazon Chinese ones, is there's a ton of lag. And obviously I can tell on the boot up screen of this radio, it's not the fastest processor. That's why it's not super expensive. But if you're wanting Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and that's your main things that you're wanting, this works just fine. I mean, I don't see any lag of getting around, opening. It's as responsive as any radio. So it may lack some features as in like the bells and whistles, but if you're someone like this guy who just wants to have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and be able to have satellite radio on here through those, this thing's pretty well perfect. So I'm gonna call that good. Oh, and the other cool thing is, I mean, which people have seen these, but you see how I have it tilted? Like this can be moved. Like I can tilt it more towards him. So now it's completely off kilter for a passenger, but if he's driving it, you can have it just more towards him, or you can put it back to being straight. You can tilt it up, you could tilt it downward, and you could slide it up, which takes a little bit of force to do. They probably should figure out a way to make that a little bit easier because people are gonna break them, but going up wouldn't make sense because he'd lose all his heating controls. So yes, I normally hate that sticking out from the dash look, but in this car and for this customer, it actually works out great. It's gonna let him see it, he can turn it towards him, get the angle he wants. And the nice thing that they did do on there is those buttons. So right here, there's a button. If you press the two buttons back there, the screen comes out. So if you were worried someone's gonna steal it, you can just slide it right out and take it in the house with you, or take it wherever, into the hotel room if you're on a trip. I definitely don't hate it. I have handled much cheaper. And honestly, I've had Jensens in the past and they're just junk. The build quality is 100% better. It's not even remotely close to what I'm used to. The software is still a little lackluster, but that can always be updated and fixed, you know, in later units. But the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay all work flawlessly, which is really what you'd be getting this for. They might have actually came up with a unit at a price point that is hard to ignore. And with that, we're done. Dodge Neon in the books. So thank you for watching. I hope this was educational, helpful, or entertaining. Whatever it was, please subscribe, like, leave a comment. I'm Cabe Sipes. Thanks for watching.